One conversation, three perspectives, honest debate on the stories shaping the travel industry.
Each episode tackles a live issue, big trend, or hot debate from across the travel industry.
Every week, we'll be joined by guests for honest conversations, strong opinions, and lively debate.
I'm Andy.
I'm Will.
I'm James. Welcome to Let's Talk Travel. We've always accepted that travel comes with a few risks, delays, cancellations, and maybe the odd strike. And this year didn't start well with a conflict in the Middle East. And now this summer, there's another challenge facing travellers. Across Europe, wildfires, extreme heat, and severe storms have disrupted holidays on a scale we've rarely seen before, leaving thousands of tourists wondering whether travel is becoming less predictable than ever. Welcome to Let's Talk Travel. Hi both. Let's be honest, us Brits, we do love talking about the weather, but I'm sure you'll all agree the weather has been in the news for all the wrong reasons of late. We've had heat waves now lasting weeks rather than days, wildfires across southern Europe affecting airports, river waters at a record low. And before you say we think it's all over, the front pages are telling us it's back. It's, today, tomorrow, heat waves across Europe, and again next week, further peaks. This doesn't seem like it's going to end. So I think the first thing that I'm ready to ask you both is, are we reaching what you call me almost like the peak of this? Is this going to start creating a massive risk for the industry? How are you both feeling about all of this?
Nice, isn't it? Nice and warm, get a bit of a glow in the face. I'm loving it. No, I mean, I'm enjoying being warm. I'm enjoying complaining about the weather. And you wait a couple of months down the road, we'll be complaining that it's raining and it's wet and it's flooding and everything else. But it's a concern now. It's kind of a reality that this is how it's going to be. We're not going back to those summers where you'd have a few good weeks and then it would be, a little bit wet and the lawn would still be green. Everything is parched earth in the UK. Everything is parched pretty much throughout Europe. And it's a serious concern as to, what it means for the industry.
I think just to maybe be slightly anti that, there is a line where the heat has hit the UK. And if you go, Liverpool probably upwards, I still think they've had a normal summer by their standards. Yeah, they've had a few nice hot days, but probably not to the same anything south of that. So I think maybe sometimes we get to talking about the weather, like there's a lot of domination of the south taking the conversation. I don't think it's necessarily affected through the whole of the UK, although Cairngorms, obviously in Scotland, has been a big issue. Is this going to be here to stay? I know the weather is only going one way, and that's hotter. Every year, as every chart has shown, data is getting hotter across Europe, hotter across the UK. It's changing seas, it's changing flows. We need to be aware of that. And if you are a travel company taking people to mainland Europe because you're going to get a hot summer, I think there's definitely a mid-term concern that I would be having if I was one of those operators to say, do you know what? I don't think people are going to get on a plane anymore to go to Spain. If you could guarantee 30 degrees in the UK, why would you do that? I don't know. I think there's a real structural challenge. It could be happening.
Not nicer food, culture.
For some, but we're in a world of political instability, rising cost of flights, rising cost of overseas. There's trade-offs that are happening.
So let me put it to you both: is it more the unpredictable nature that has created this, I want to say, chaos that is making front page of the newspapers? We're seeing travel agents, we've seen tour ops all raising their arms, being like, what do we do? We're not, there's lots of people confused because the Foreign and Commonwealth are basically saying, well, you can still travel to certain areas, because if you're flying in and you're traveling over there, they're not saying that airport's closed, they're saying that airport's open. And, that region is open. And that's what a lot of holiday makers, particularly to France, are being affected because they're driving over. They're taking the ferry or they're taking the tunnel, and why should they get their money back? So do you think it's this unprecedented nature of these events that's creating the chaos rather than it just being a very hot destination to visit?
I think we've got to a sort of culmination of a lot of things. I think it's been getting hotter over the last few years. I would suggest that 2026 is even hotter than it has been previously. And maybe this is a slight outlier, but, to Andy's point before, it is the direction of travel. So I think it has caught some people out. But I think certainly looking ahead, this is the new norm, or at least where I expect it to be across mainland Europe. So, people aren't going to have to take measures. The local environments, the local cities, etc., are going to have to take some kind of measures and consider the safety of their tourists, especially if they want to attract them. And then it's going to come down to how these destinations can be sold and whether travelers are going to want to go there.
Yeah, and I think just some of the data I've been looking at over the last few years has shown people searching less for Greece, searching less for Cyprus, searching less for Turkey. It's not these destinations are not getting bookings. It's not that they're less popular, but I think there's a general understanding, particularly after wildfires in those countries a few years ago, that those places are going to be bloody hot in the summer. And do I really want to take my kids there in the middle of August when it's going to be 40 degrees every day? And I might find it unbearable if I've just had 35 degrees in the UK for a week. So I think there will be some real thought about how these destinations position themselves, because they used to position themselves as a nice summer retreat for some warmth. Now it's like excessive heat. And maybe then they have to think more about October, April, even March to attract the visitors. And then maybe they're still popular, just in different times of the year.
Which is what we see with destinations like Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Will used to live in Oman, and we know those summer months become incredibly hot, but it doesn't deter every tourist. In fact, a lot of tourists like the fact that they get guaranteed sunshine and guaranteed heat at that time of the year. Will?
Yeah, I mean, there's slight differences. That's typically dry heat. And in a funny way, that's more tolerable than, the real humidity and that kind of sweaty closeness. I think any of these destinations, the one thing I would say, well, not all of them, but many of them, obviously you are talking about air conditioning, you are talking about swimming pools, you are talking about the sea. So it is slightly different still from a lot of what is offered in a staycation. So that will be interesting to see how places in the UK adapt to that and the change in temperature in that. So, I mean, I still relish going away. I was in Spain last week. It tops of 38 degrees, but we were by the sea. We had some great food. Also got to see family, which is great. The slightly alarming thing was I landed back into Stansted and it was only 20 degrees, and I was like, oh, I think I need a jumper now. So there might be a change in psyche there. For me, the bigger challenge is around where it's affecting holidays, it's affecting lives, and it's causing immense damage to the environment and the whole sort of ecosystem of some of these places, which we've seen sadly with the wildfires. And I think that is going to shift the mindset for a lot of people.
And what we've seen over predominantly the last few days, but let's call it the last week, is a confusion around, am I protected? Do I get my money back? So where does the consumer sit in all of this, Will?
It's back to our old friends at the FCDO. FDCO even. Let's get them right. We did a whole episode on these, so I should know and do check that out, because we talked about the Iran war on that particular episode. But the fact that there's no advice or no statement around whether the fact that you shouldn't travel means that largely you're not protected. So travel insurance isn't going to protect you on that side of things. And also, if you look at the package travel regulations, tour operators will make decisions, and you're probably better prepared and better protected on that. But if you are literally doing separate pieces, if you're buying your own flights, putting together your own holidays, you are not protected at all. So again, we did an episode on that as well, and Andy was wrong on that part. This is where it does get dicey for people, because this is not something that's being stipulated by the FDCO. This is not something that is largely going to be insured and covered, and there's massive risk. And also the situation is moving so fast. So you can't just say, oh, well, I'm going there, it's safe there now, and it's not safe now. This is a fast evolving situation.
Yeah, in a week's time, it could be completely different. If you're talking about particularly France and Spain, or maybe even fires spring up in new places, like it's all scorched earth, isn't it? In a lot of Europe. But yeah, to your point earlier on, and the episode you talked about, there is a lot of people who self-booked. I self-booked my trip this summer. it could go horribly wrong for me. But
Mhm.
a lot of people have never had that pain of needing a travel agent, of needing PTRs, of needing insurance to actually come to their rescue, because for 10 years, as I said before, like it's all been plain sailing. So when you get these extreme events, and they're coming to the UK, like in Scotland you've got massive fires, in France you're going to have more fires. I'm sure are going to be on the news this week. So what used to be safe places, I can book that, it's fine, that's going to change in travelers' minds. 2027 may see another list of selections of destinations that become more popular, because I can't possibly go to the south of France. What happens if there's another fire again? It's going to mean that the trends shift even more rapidly, I think.
I think where there's confusion in the market is for those people who have self-booked. Let's just say you've done your flights or your train to France, you're driving, you've booked your own villa. The villa property may be on the other side of the fires, but you've got to drive through that area where there's mass road closures and it's basically impossible to get to the villa. The villa will ultimately be saying, no, it's 100% cancellation. The villa's open, it's accessible. What are you going to do about it? And actually, the villa is in its right to do that, because it's not the villa's fault that the person cannot get from there. So it's going to be a difficult one for the industry. It will probably bode well for those tour operators who are handling it with the uppermost professionalism that they used to do with all these types of events that they're unfortunately getting more and more practice with. So then that probably then leads us on to the conversation is, will these destinations be tarnished for next year? Do you think this will damage the amount of tourism that somewhere like France gets? And then those other surrounding destinations like Madrid, like Valencia, like some of those regional destinations in Spain and France.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can paint a brush across an entire country and say, will that damage tourism to Spain and France? I think if you look at the areas that have been affected, I think sadly they're going to struggle to accommodate a large amount of tourists. And also, from what I understand, there's been so much damage. So are people actually going to want to visit those regions on that basis? And that's probably the real tragedy in all of this. People go to these stunning locations, they go and spend money there. The economy is backed by tourism, in large parts, and they're going to lose that at a time where they need that money to help recover and build back up the community. So that's going to be the real tragedy in all of this. Yeah, I think people will be put off. I think, it's harsh to say people are fickle, but people will read the news. They will think, I want to go to somewhere that I consider safe. And, around Bordeaux probably isn't considered safe. Certainly not safe at the moment. I appreciate that. But moving forwards, so they probably will be more selective on that.
Andy?
I think maybe you're over-egging it slightly. I mean, Greece had wildfires. All those regions in sort of Eastern Europe had big problems on the telly. Yes, I would then say that searches are down, but I think that's maybe to do with the heat rather than the circumstances that they had. But France is never going to go away as a destination. People are always going to want to go there. It's very close. I would say same with Italy. I think we've touched upon cool locations. Maybe we'll talk about a bit more, but I think there will be more of a trend, and I'm perhaps one of those people that looks at some of those destinations, says, I've got a family, I've got young kids. Do they want to be in 35 degrees in the middle of France for a week or two? Let's think about somewhere cooler, because you're going to guarantee that you're not going to have that issue. And I think maybe the Nordics then becomes more popular. And I saw today, I think it was on Travel Gossip, that Virgin are doing some cruises out there for the first time in 27 and 28, because I guess there's more demand in that area.
Yeah.
And I think, again, this is a sort of a gradual trend to go further north rather than further south or east.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the question I've got for you two actually is whether you think that it will have a positive effect back on staycations, because I still think there is an infrastructure issue in terms of, the heat in this country. So yes, on cool stations, what are they called? Cool staycations? Still cool cations.
Coolcations.
I'm not down with the lingo. So yeah, I can see there being a push for that. But I still stand by the fact that a lot of these countries and a lot of the holidays that are advertised will come down to, it's got a pool, it's by the sea, it's got air conditioning, and it's abroad. So I'm interested in your views actually in terms of whether you got, well, James, you're the deal man, where the deal's going to be to.
So there's the UK is a funny one. There's two booking trends for the UK. There are people who book quite far in advance for their summer vacations in the UK because they love to have that rental property or be at that hotel by the coast. But then you've got the others who are the weather traders. They will assess, and you do get a huge spike in the UK when there's a forecast, a good summer, good last minute trading. So what I would put it down to is, will this change people's booking habits for next year for the UK? Potentially, there will be maybe a small increase year over year, knowing that the summers are good. But what type of properties will they be booking? And I think it will be the same. It will be hotels which provide the air conditioning in the pools, or those locations by the coast. I don't think anyone wants to be in the middle of a city right now at a penthouse apartment or otherwise. That actually becomes more unappealing, especially with the way our tubes operate.
I think there has also been, since COVID though, a push for UK staycations. I mean, I've holidayed exclusively in the UK the last 5 years, and trying to get a good place for the summer months is a bit of a bun fight in January. Like those properties that are really good in those areas that are perhaps, you know, featured in magazines and brochures and online, those become very popular very quickly, and it's very hard to get them. So I think there's already a trend of people holidaying in the UK. I would expect it's going to get harder to find the house with the aircon or with a pool at the back, because those are going to command a premium. Yes. So I think you'll just see a push even more of the ones that are accommodating for it already. If I had some of these holiday homes in Cornwall or Devon and I was by the sea or not by the sea, I'd be looking at how much it costs to retrofit those things, or air pumps or a pool, because as we say, this is only going to get hotter. In 10 years' time, like Devon could be the hot spot for the UK, and they need to start tooling up right now to accommodate.
So we've mentioned the word Caucasians. It's probably a great opportunity for us to actually explain what that is, because it sounds like Will has already got confused. But over the last few years, Will, the big trend has been Caucasians, and you can see how that clever play on word is. But it's suggesting travellers are increasingly looking to those cooler climates. So the big winners in that have been Denmark, Norway, Sweden, so those Scandic countries, Scotland, Ireland, and of course, the wider part of the UK. And what we're seeing particularly is the peak months, people are looking at those destinations, and those shoulder and low months, they're looking at more of the traditional destinations like Greece, like Turkey, and obviously the UAE destinations. So, Andy, where are you going on holiday this summer? Because I think you're a Caucasianer.
I am a Caucasian. I was just having just said exclusively holiday in the UK. This summer, I will be going to Copenhagen, which is in Denmark, which is very high up on the part of the globe, because it's going to be 22, 23 degrees, and it's almost guaranteed. So in the same way, some families, rightly, and I would like to do this one day, want a 35-degree guaranteed heat for 2 weeks or a week, whenever they're going away. We talked to the kids. The kids said they don't want excessive heat. They don't enjoy it in the UK. And 22, 23, 24 feels about right for the summer. You can walk around the city, not get too hot. You're not going to get too dehydrated. So for us, it was a good choice. And I think more people are starting to move that way. And that's coming through in various bits of data as well.
And in particular, if you're looking to go to a destination which is more of a on-foot destination, you're exploring, you're maybe doing a city break, which the Scandinavian countries have a lot of wonderful cities. You don't want to be in 35 degrees heat, because, you know, looking at Valencia, Seville, Madrid, these secondary and tertiary city breaks in Spain, it almost makes it unbearable.
Yeah, but you know, that is a trend which is small. I don't think it's mass market yet. I think it probably will be over the next decade. But you know, looking at some data about package holidays, lots more people are looking at Q3 because they want that last minute deal. They still want to go to the continent. They still, as we've said here, want to get a pool. They want a beach. They want a cheap food experience or some cultural differences for their children, their family. So Caucasians are coming. They are here. They are a growing trend. Not perhaps as big as it might be, which is probably why it's not hit Will's radar yet.
I'm just not cool. I think that's probably where it sits.
Okay, so I'll ask you both a quick spot question. Andy, will Caucasians make it into Travelzoo's top 5 trends for next year?
Absolutely, of course it will, definitely. I'm a trendsetter, so no doubt.
Okay, Will?
Yeah, because you're going to present them. So I assume you're going to sneak it in and make sure that you win. Whatever your answer is will be what happens.
Very good. Okay, so one of the things that we mentioned at the start, an area of travel which is we've spoke about, we've done a podcast on it, is cruise. Now, with cruise, they've always had the ability to kind of circumnavigate some of these issues because they can reroute their cruise ships. But a river ship can't necessarily reroute because they're only going one way. So how do you think this is going to affect the river cruise market? You've had some experience with this, Andy, with one of your partners.
Yes, one of our clients, I'm not going to say the name because they've already been in the trade press, but they have unfortunately been affected by it. They've had to take people off some of their ships. They've had to reroute. And I also know through another one of our clients who sells river cruises that demand, I mean, there's still demand, there's still interest, but there's a lot of concern because, again, that audience has historically been quite risk averse. They want to, spend their money wisely. They want to make sure they guarantee their trip. They now hear that the rivers are drying up, and it's, as we say, it's only going to get hotter. Europe's only going to go one way. Those rivers are going to go down and down and down. Like, that is going to put a seed of doubt on their head. So river cruise, I think, has had a bit of a bad rap this year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And again, like we talked about this before, does cruise always get the rap? I think sometimes it does because, one ship has a problem that's on the trade press versus a whole region of France. Well, it'll be fine next year. So I don't think it's quite fair that we look at it through that lens, but certainly it has been affected. I think it will be affected. And I think those river cruise lines have got a bit of PR to do to say your booking is safe. These rivers are going to be fine. Your trip will be covered because if we don't, same with like France, if we don't actively do the PR, then they are going to suffer long term, I'm sure.
I think some of the good news stories coming out of this is where river cruise lines have worked together. They've shared allocations on ships. They've tried to pivot transfers and rotate the way that customers are using their transportation in resort to get them out to these tourist attractions and kind of keep the cruise in operation. So there are some good news stories there. Will?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have both made really valid points. I wonder whether what we will actually see is a slight change to how all of this is approached. And we've spoken before, both on podcasts and off the podcast, about how there is this relentless sort of upwards slope in travel, and every company is trying to grow year on year. And I wonder whether, exactly to your point, whether there'll be certain sort of collaborations between parties to make these things feasible. I also think someone like Emirates has set a really interesting precedence with the insurance that they're including in terms of protecting trips if war was to break out again in that region. And I wonder whether you'll see, and that I love it, and I love pushing it, but that sort of adaptation in terms of what is covered. So you will actually now buy, weather protection on your trip, and especially on your cruise. For years, there were a few companies doing, rain policies. So you would basically insure against, not having a certain amount of rain during your trip. I wonder whether it be excessive weather, whether it will be, the rivers, not deep enough to navigate, and that will be a greater kind of movement. But I think in all of this, ultimately, what it will come down to, and where travel has always been very good, is adapting. And the businesses that adapt and that, change to different periods, change their model, work with partners, they will be the ones that thrive. But unfortunately, because nature is against a lot of these things, if you don't adapt, that's where businesses will struggle.
And I think, just to echo maybe James's point and maybe your point slightly, Will, like if we think about any industry that seems to have come together really collaboratively in the last 5 years to see success, it is the cruise industry, and Clear as a sort of a pioneer of that. We've talked about ABTA's role in the travel industry in terms of what PR they do, what collaboration they bring. I hope, again, that in some of these bad circumstances, we can find some good, where there is an adaptation in terms of offer, there's adaptation in terms of policy, and also just a good PR story. This isn't the end of travel, despite what you've read and seen and heard. There's a whole load of new good stuff out there which you can discover and find, and we'll all evolve and we'll keep going.
Yeah. It has been a challenging year so far. You think about some of the disruption the industry has faced, and you kind of do think to yourself, what's next. Hopefully we have a bit of a bit of blue sky, and we can just get back to what we're doing best. Right, so a couple of final thoughts and questions for you both. How far do you think weather and previous weather events will move up this list of key considerations and searching and booking a holiday for 2027 and beyond with the consumer?
I think it's going to become a very big issue. And I think looking at some data, I was talking with someone the other day, like the fact that you can rebook or you've got flexibility, I think will be a massive selling point in 2027. It should be, and I think it still is in 2026, but some of those brands don't push it enough. 2027, if you're booking a river cruise, there is flexibility to change. There is an option to go on a coach on certain days. Maybe they repackage some of these things. So I think just putting the certainty in the traveler's mind will be important. And I have a second thing, which is about people not self-booking quite so much. And again, if I was in the travel industry as an agent or an Advantage or whoever, I'll be going big and hard to say, you are covered with us. We will make sure you either fly or you don't fly, you travel, you don't travel, you're going to be safe, because I think that's a massive message the industry needs to get out there.
Yeah. It'd be great to see Aptos come out at the moment and say something bold and big. Will?
Sorry, just biting my tongue. Communication, as always in this industry. And to Andy's point, I think if the industry can do stuff along that, it will be better for it. I think the real danger, again, and we've addressed this, but I think this will push the lates even more. I think people are just going to hold on even longer to see what the weather's going to be like in the next couple of weeks, what the weather's going to be like, next month, because history might not be enough. And certainly, if you looked at Bordeaux maybe 2-3 years ago, are you going to see the kind of levels of temperature we've seen this year? So I think that is problematic for the industry. We've all said that in terms of the industry struggles with lates, and it will do if it's sort of long-term kind of policy or approach by the industry. So I think that's the one thing that the weather and the weather uncertainty will really push.
And just an additional question for you, Will, because you mentioned it. Do you think the current situation in the market has also prompted EasyJet to release virtually all of 2027, both flights and packages, till the end of October next year?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think everybody wants that security. Everyone wants to get some money in and feel a little bit more stable, especially if you're trying to port some investors. Obviously, that's greatly helpful. But again, I think that's what you'll see. But yeah, I really struggle to see, not the majority of people, that's unfair, but I really struggle to see, even with massive discounting up front, that there won't be a serious lates market unless, to Andy's point, there is that total flexibility around the ability to cancel and refund and everything else. And even that then is changing the market, because it's not really a firm booking, is it? It's not really guaranteed money. So it's going to have to be looked at. And as I said before, it's who can innovate. It's who can come up with something that stabilizes the situation for their company and gives reassurance to the customer.
And do you think, to make both of you, do you think we will see this evolution of insurance policies and adaptation of maybe even the atoll to show some flexibility about weather, or do you think it will always sit as a force majeure type of event where they'll say, look, you can't start having insurance policies in if it's too hot or if it's too wet?
I think knowing insurance that will always try and find a way to put a policy together. I think that the stock answer will always be force majeure. But again, the companies that win, not just around insurance, I'm not just peddling insurance, but the companies that win on that adaptation, both to their model and, the right to refund, the right to change, what they do, how they perform in the event of the rivers not being deep enough, the kind of taste that they leave in the customers, the satisfaction they leave in the customer's mouth will be really important moving forwards. But I think you will see more initiatives around terms, around insurance, to really give that reassurance to a customer.
Yeah. Well, the other thing it does is, you can get some super policies which cover all sorts of things. But if you're a luxury traveler, you can afford that. If you're on a package and it's pick a high street name, you probably won't be able to afford it, and there's going to be an element of potluck, perhaps. And then to Will's point, well, if I'm not going to be covered, maybe I'll just hold off booking until I'm confident this country or place is going to be cool. Otherwise, I won't book it. So it's again, you get more premiumization, and you get more at the bottom end, which are just a bit more sporadic and hard to measure and hard to, I guess, quantify as time goes on.
Yeah.
Thanks to our sponsor, Travelzoo, the club for travel enthusiasts. Join Travelzoo today for hand-picked deals exclusively for members.
Guys, thank you so much for today. Another great episode. I think it's clear weather hasn't stopped being the detail of travel, but it's becoming almost a determining factor, particularly when it looks at those forward booking trends and how members and customers alike will be booking their holidays. One of the key things I think was a real takeaway from this is, again, this resilience in the market. It's lovely to read all those nice stories about the industry working together, the way they're communicating and just dealing with another issue that set them back this year. So let's watch this space. You never know. We might be talking about this again in another later podcast, but fingers crossed that we see the end of this trouble and we see some of that blue sky I spoke about. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, we'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe, review us, share the podcast, tell all your colleagues and friends about us, because that's how it's going to get bigger and better. Also, if you want to be on the podcast, please do reach out to us, because we're looking for guest speakers to join us and share us their expertise on our podcast. You can follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube by searching Let's Talk Travel. But until next time, thanks for listening.